Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a co-chair of Harris's campaign, is expected to speak this week in Chicago. Whitmer is out with a new memoir, True Gretch, What I've Learned About Life, Leadership, and Everything in Between. And Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer joins me now. Governor Whitmer, welcome back to Meet the Press.
Glad to be with you, Kristen.
Well, it's great to have you on a big Sunday. As I just laid out, Vice President Harris has momentum right now. The question is, can she keep it? Given that President Biden had historically low approval ratings, given that he was running behind Mr. Trump in a number of different issues, almost every issue, in fact, do you believe that Vice President Harris should be doing more to distance herself from President Biden?
I think President Biden is going to go down as one of the greatest presidents we've had in a long time in this country. And Kamala Harris has been a big part of this administration. They've been partners. They've delivered for the American people. So I think we've got to tell that story. I also am excited about this new chapter in American politics. Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, I think, are a wonderful complement to one another. They're real people who've lived middle-class lives. They know what people in this country are going through. And they know how to address the problems, whether it's affordable housing or bringing down the cost of groceries or helping you if you're raising kids in your household or just simply fighting for fundamental rights. So there's a lot of energy. It's exciting. But I'm from Michigan, so I can tell you this is going to be a close race all the way through.
Let's delve into some of the policies the vice president laid out, some of her economic policies this week. Among other things, she's proposing a ban on price gouging. Here is what Obama administration economist Jason Furman had to say. He said, quote, "This is not sensible policy. And I think the biggest hope is that it ends up being a lot of rhetoric and not reality. There's no upside here, and there is some downside." He warned effectively that price controls could ultimately stifle economic growth. So do you think that's the best way to bring down prices in Michigan?
Well, I think people are reading too much into what has been put out there. We know that Kamala Harris is going to be focused on building up more affordable housing. We know that Kamala Harris has already delivered on making sure that health care is more accessible and affordable for Americans and will protect Obamacare. That's 1 million people who have health care in Michigan right now that Donald Trump's been trying to rip away. That only adds costs onto people's backs. And so that's why I think this opportunity economy that Vice President Harris is talking about and laying the broad strokes for, I think shows we really do. She sees every American. She understands what people are struggling with and wants to help you keep more money in your pocket. The biggest part of our personal budgets go toward housing, go toward health care, go toward the fundamentals. And she's got a plan on all those fronts to help more Americans be able to get a path to prosperity.
Well, Governor, I hear you saying that folks are reading too much into it, and yet it is what the vice president is proposing. You have former President Trump calling the policies communist. The Washington Post editorial board called it a gimmick. Is this plan to ban price gouging anything more than a gimmick, Governor?
I think it speaks to Kamala Harris's values, that she wants consumers to keep more money in their pockets. She wants hardworking Americans to be able to get ahead. She wants to make sure that there is corporate responsibility. We know we've got to have business growth in this country, small business growth, big business growth for good paying jobs. But we also know that you can't gouge and hurt the American consumer just to pad your bottom line. And I think there is there's a balance there, and I think that's what this is all about.
So you think it's smart policy, Governor?
You know what? I think that any effort we make to keep more money in Americans' pockets is worth walking the path and having the conversations and figuring out how do we make this economy work for everybody.
Let's talk big picture. The campaign's only a month old. Obviously, everything that she said in the past is starting to come into focus. When she ran in 2020, you will recall she called for banning fracking, supporting single-payer health care, eliminating private health insurance. The campaign says she no longer supports those positions. The Trump campaign, though, is calling her a chameleon. Do you think that Vice President Harris needs to do more to explain why she has shifted on those positions?
Well, I think, insult from the Trump campaign is laughable when you think about his years in office and who he fought for. He fought for himself. And that's he's laid out nothing in terms of a vision for America. He's feeding into people's anxieties and anger. That's what he always does. But he's never done anything that makes someone's life a little bit better. In fact, his time in office, we had record job loss. We saw so many deaths from COVID because he put out misinformation, denied that it was even a problem. I mean, this is a guy who, he calls other people names, but offers nothing of value to the American people when it comes to a vision or a plan to make people's lives better. And the contrast is stark. What you're going to see this week in Chicago is a bunch of happy warriors who understand the middle class, understand how we pull more people into the middle class and make sure that every one of us can have that path to prosperity and live our American dream and take care of our families.
Well, let me ask you about her running mate, Tim Walz, and particularly on the issue of immigration. Obviously, some of his policies in his state have come into focus. He signed into law initiatives allowing undocumented immigrants to apply for driver's licenses, free tuition at public universities, and enroll in the state's free health care program for low-income residents. Would you like to see the Harris administration adopt those same policies, Governor?
Well, I can tell you, Tim Walz is a pragmatic guy. He's a Midwesterner just like me, and I think some of the wonderful things he's done in Minnesota resonate with, Americans in all states. We know that when you provide free breakfast and lunch for all the school kids in your state, you're saving parents $850 a year per student just on the grocery bill. So I think what you see in Tim Walz is a pragmatist who wants to make sure that we are a beacon that people come to. You need to come legally. We need to secure our borders. But we also know that the great history of this country is that we were the place that people came to for an opportunity, and that's got to be the great future of it, too.
But so would you support the Harris administration if she were to be elected, adopting those proposals I just laid out for you, for example, driver's licenses for those who are undocumented?
I think what we need to do is have a system, an immigration system that works, number one. We need to secure the border. We need to make sure that when people are in this country that they have access to have some form of ID. That's really important. And I think the spirit of those things, I think, should be a part of any vision for the country and our security and how we bring great people into this country legally.
All right, let's talk about the convention coming up this week. Organizers are bracing for tens of thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters to converge in Chicago. I want you to take a look at how Vice President Harris responded to protesters at a rally in Detroit just last week. Take a look.
I'm here because we believe in democracy. Everyone's voice matters, but I am speaking now. You know what? If you want Donald Trump to win, then say that. Otherwise, I'm speaking.
Governor, do you think she handled that moment well?
I'm not going to go and second guess. It was kind of in the moment. I can tell you this. Kamala Harris cares about every person. She cares about Arab American voters and Muslim voters and Palestinian voters. She cares about Jewish voters and Jewish Americans as well. You can both want peace in the region and a cessation of violence and the return of hostages. We are a country that continually falls into these false choices. You can do both, and I think that's why we need a leader like her. She's been meeting with people in the communities, all of these communities. Her campaign cares about everyone, and I think that's evident in her policies and the seat at the table she's making for every person. And I know Tim Walz feels the same. There is more work to do because there is a lot of pain. And I'm hopeful that the Biden administration will have something that can be announced soon. What Netanyahu's comments and what we're seeing from Hamas looks like they're making some progress. I know they're hard at work at it, and I'm still very hopeful about that.
Yeah, a lot of people watching those talks quite closely, that's for sure. Let me ask you about your book. Here it is, True Gretch. In it, you write about when you were out campaigning for governor in 2018 And when a voter asked you if you would run, quote, as a woman, and you write that you, quote, did run as a woman, but not only as a woman. What's notable, that was just 2 years after Hillary Clinton's historic presidential campaign. She made a point of reminding voters that she was trying to break the glass ceiling. Do you think that Vice President Kamala Harris should be leaning in more to the historic nature of her campaign?
Well, you know what? It is historic, and I think so many of us see it. We're excited about it. I remember going to Philadelphia in 2016 with my daughters in the car with me and thinking, my girls have grown up with 8 years of an African-American president, and we were on the cusp of perhaps having a female president. And those were things I never, ever could have conceived growing up in this country when I did. And so I do think that it is historic. And women in leadership, I think you see the results. I've got 7 colleagues who are female Democratic governors doing great work in all of our states. And Kamala Harris is going to make a seat at the table for every person. And I think that's a uniquely female characteristic in leadership. And I'm excited. That is one part of what we're going to be talking about this week, the historic nature of it, but also she's a pragmatist. She's a great leader, and she just wants to get stuff done. And I think that's the most important thing.
Governor, I have to ask you about another part of your book, one of the more powerful parts, when you talk about the 2020 kidnapping assassination plot against you. You write that the experience changed you. You said, quote, "It's not that I live in fear, but there's a heightened awareness now that I didn't have before, not just as a governor, but as a person, as a mom, and as a wife." Here we are in this heated election campaign cycle. And of course, there was just an assassination attempt against former President Trump. Do you fear for your own safety right now, Governor?
I don't, but I do fear for everyone around me. I've got the Michigan State Police, and they worked very closely with the FBI when that plot was when they were executing all the different steps that they were going to do in preparation for the kidnapping and killing of me. I never felt personally unsafe, but I do worry about the people around me, and I think that's a very real thing that I will always take. And I write about that, but I also write some of the lesson in the book, which is, you can't take all these things personally. And that might surprise people, that I want to actually sit down and understand what drove these men to do this. Because I do think listening is a superpower, whether you're in the private sector or public sector, politics or anything else. Understanding, seeing the humanity in someone and learning, I think is really important, and listening. So the book, I talk about 10 things I've learned in my life that have helped me navigate the last 6 years. It's an effort to put some inspiration out into the world in a heavy time. Maybe it's just a little light reading, or you get a laugh at my expense, but that's what True Gretch is all about, to put some leadership skills out in the world, but also some lightness too. Finally,
Governor, I have to ask you, last week, President Biden said he was not confident there would be a peaceful transfer of power in 2025 if former President Trump were to win re-election. Are you confident there will be? If he were to lose re-election, would you be confident that there would be a peaceful transfer of power?
Well, I think he's already trying to stoke the suspicions of people, and I think that's an effort directly to play into his ability to discount the outcome of this upcoming election if he doesn't like the outcome. That's not how democracy works. And I think it's important that we're all vigilant. I know in Michigan we've strengthened our election laws, protecting election workers, et cetera. But I still anticipate that they will use similar tactics to what they used 4 years ago. And I think that we should all be very concerned about that and what that could mean for safety, for the integrity of our democratic institutions, and the future of this country.
All right. Governor Gretchen Whitmer, thank you so much for your time this morning. We really appreciate it. We will see you at the Democratic National Convention next week.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app, or follow us on social media.